Good evening, welcome everyone to the second day of IMPACT21. Tonight with a lecture by Arne Vogelgesang, who joined us today. I will just quickly introduce him. Arne Vogelgesang is an artist who experiments with documentary material, new media, fiction and performance. And one of his research focuses is on radical political propaganda in the internet. And this April, we invited him already in the frame of our online program with his lecture, This Is Not a Game. I think it's actually more like a video essay and a lecture on the QAnon phenomenon. So he's also dealing there with all these relations between gamification, between online communities and political movements. And tonight, the lecture's title is Let's Play Infokrieg, which means, like, translated into English, infowars. So we will hear more about this, I guess. Very welcome to Arne Vogelgesang, and I give the word to him now.
Thank you. Hi. Hello, people. Hello, probable virtual people in the internet who are maybe there and maybe not. Let's see. I usually start with disclaimers. I will not talk about my artistic practice today, but about practical politics. And please don't quote me as inventing this term. Practical politics is a term that was coined by a US white supremacist for describing discursive hacks. So to bring radical, you know what their issues are, issues into normal discourses and insert them, try to play with these discourses. I will be mainly doing descriptive storytelling now by the means of examples. I occasionally include interpretations or analysis, but that's not my main focus. I just tell you about stuff I've seen, basically. English is not my first language, so if I sound weird, that's why. I already mixed up the titles because I've done various iterations of this talk already under different titles, because sometimes people want a new title because I've given it before, so I invent a new one. But this is, for the most part, it's just a lot of stuff. Since I gave the first iteration of this talk in April 2019, I have collected more examples on gamified radical politics than I can talk about here, or we can discuss in the short time frame given, because I want to kind of talk about 40 minutes maybe, and then have some more time to talk about what I talked about, so you can talk too, and then we wrap up and can drink more beer or other things. So with your permission, I would like to cross out a few things from this list. You can still learn about most of the things I will not talk about today if you are inclined to do so. There's a recording of a version of this talk here at Chaos Communication Congress from 2019, and I'm trying to reenact this talk right now because I had such a thing there, and it was like 1,500 people in the space, and I was like doing this all the time because I was so excited because there were far too many people in the space. I'm going to do this again, just for sentimental reasons now. It was live translated into English, so there is kind of an okayish English translation of it, and you maybe get the gist. Especially for Gamergate and its function as a right-wing recruiting pool, you will find a lot of English language descriptions and analysis online if you want to learn about it. I feel the desire to dive into one hell of a rabbit hole of fighting over history in the making because it's still going on, although the main time of Gamergate was 2014, 15 maybe. Then, yeah, Gamergate is a safe bet. You can do so. You'll find a lot of stuff, which is, yeah, just do it or don't do it if you don't want to. I made a video essay that was mentioned before on the QAnon complex at the beginning of this year. It has English subtitles. I made them, and I'm happy if you watch it because it means I didn't make the English subtitles in vain. It was up on YouTube until last week when they deleted it for cyberbullying, which I find fascinating. But yeah, they also did not take my appeal, but says, no, this video is harassment. So be warned, you can watch it on Vimeo if you want to. It's still up there. I don't think it's harassing, except if you maybe are a QAnon believer. For today, I selected these examples of how reality is being reworked with game principles. And funny enough, cyberbullying is a topic there. So I hope... Oh, my script says, I hope you're not streaming this to YouTube, but you are. Well, good luck with that. I chose these topics here because they are from the German-speaking sphere, and you will be less likely to find accounts on them outside of German media. So it might be of more interest to you to learn about it tonight if you don't speak German. Also, with alt-right Chan culture, pickup artists, and stochastic terror gone from today's menu, I will not talk about that, we are relieved of the most vile content, so to say, which is nice. We won't feel so bad after those 40 minutes. Still, I will talk about radical right-wing propaganda and about harassment, so be warned, unless you have personal traumatizing experiences with bullying, I think you should be okay following along. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So the leading question for me is, how does the appropriation of game cultures and game techniques affect political action? And I will be using the example of the political field of the right, without defining what is right, but I tend to look at the far right mostly. Of course, you will find example of this in any political field. You will find it in the center, you will find it in the left. It's just what I concentrate on. So this is partly, I don't know, like political education, maybe, I guess, or edutainment. And partly I'm interested in the broader or more general phenomena that we might understand better when looking at such examples. The term somewhat suitable to describe what I'm aiming at is gamification. Gamification is a pretty old principle. It was formalized with the advent of game culture industry, though. So although we could say we've been gamifying maybe forever, I mean, when I went home from school when I was young, I tried to not step on the lines on the street, because I imagined I would explode if I do so. That was the game I invented to make it more interesting to get home, so I gamified my way home. You don't need digital media to do that, but since gamification is at the core of so many things, especially the so-called social media, it has become like a thing and more formal. The term was coined 2002 by Nick Pelling, a British developer of computer games, and it is not about games, but about likeness to games. In the last 2 years, though, it has become a somewhat fancy term for describing perceived changes in the way radical political action and intervention is being approached online, which has something to do with the terror attacks in Christchurch and the following terror attacks that were discussed under the focus of gamification. So it became more interesting for also the cultural sphere or for people talking about discourses. But that has led to a somewhat blurry use of the term that sometimes is not much more than a vague gesturing in the direction of game culture influenced aesthetics. This is somehow gamey, it must be gamification. And I know that, and I can say that because I've been doing it myself. I will again be doing it today because I think we lack a better term for what is interesting for us. Why is it that gamification has become such a focus? I think it is because games allow you to act against your own interests with pleasure. If you ever played in a lottery, you know what I mean. You know you won't be winning, but still it's somewhat nice to enjoy the tension. See, maybe I could be, like that. That's pleasure. And this is maybe to the most important aspect in gamification, something that is called intrinsic motivation. You don't have to be motivated from the outside, you really want to do something. Games are played voluntarily, that's one of their core aspects. At least that's what the theory says. In reality, it tends to be a bit more complicated, especially if you go into the field of gamification, because not always do you know that you're playing a game when you are. And intrinsic motivation is something like the holy grail of gamification, which is why it was hyped in the 2010s in the economy, where its potential as a ruling technique was recognized and formulated quite early. So in its potential to turn market events or market relationships into something like fanatical religious wars that everyone enjoys, as we know. Which is coincidentally what happened to a number of societies influenced by gamified social media. So there may be a connection there, but that is a different story, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I use the term gamification, as I say, broadly, especially as a perspective, and the examples I will give you will be about gamification in the strict sense, as well as about penetrating levels of discourse with game design, or about conceiving social relationships as a game-like entertainment and the power abuse that can happen if you do that. I tried to break down the aspects and applications of gamification to different levels, and the first of these levels, the structural level, is the one most commonly discussed and used when you talk about gamification, and the one that would be, I would say, a necessary component of gamification in the stricter sense, is setting yourself goals, setting yourself rules, and some kind of achievement you can get them that is kind of give you a reward, like what I did with my way home. Defined some rules, and it was like pleasurable. There was a structure there. But the other aspects are, in a way, more interesting from my perspective as a theater maker, because they are better suited to describe the potential of gamification to organize meritocratic communities that elevate something to their modus operandi, which has a German word but no good English translation, that is Uneigentlichkeit. I just leave it at that. It's something like in a mode of as if, but it's not bad per se. It's just a shift in perception and in dealing with reality, and that's what you can do if you play a game. Which is maybe the broader point. Is also what you're doing if you play theater. It's maybe the broader point and the phenomenon we up to now lack a better word for: fictionalizing reality or realifying fiction, maybe. Feeling relieved of the responsibility or of the need for example, empathy when dealing with other people in a game-like way, because they're just characters in a game anyway, right? I'm not going to dive into theory further, but before I go into my stories, I will give you a few examples of gamification. Couponing, bonus miles, progress bars. You probably, like me, spend a lot of time of your life watching these, and it's oddly satisfying. It's better than waiting. It's gamified waiting in a way. Basically all formats that are about collecting points, about leveling up, Weight Watchers, where you kind of count your calories, was a way to gamify losing weight. Mechanics that are about setting goals and stimulating motivation. Things that regulate certain decisions, for example, political decisions. The German Wahlomat has been showing people their likely political party preferences since 2020, so it tried to gamify like election decision making. You can also regulate social decisions with one simple hand movement. You can match your desires with someone else's desires. And you even get a practical radar function that turns potential romantic partners into some kind of Pokemon that you can just hunt down in the vicinity. Yeah, I heard you laughed. So that means you got this joke because of the massive success of Pokemon Go, which gamified movement in public space to an extent that already after half a year after its inception, its users had walked an accumulated distance long enough to leave the solar system, all while being watched over by machines of loving grace, of course. On the one hand, this game's success, Pokemon Go's success, led to a new field of joint advertising, with Pokemons being placed close to shops that paid for that. Yeah, you have joint partnerships. So here we have the Pokemon, then maybe people buy an iPhone after that. Should be nice. Which is kind of an instance of pervasive gaming. On the other hand, it formed a nexus ready to be exploited, for example, by US neo-Nazis from the Daily Stormer, who started distributing flyers in gyms for overlapping their young target audiences. So they would catch the people who would go there for the muscle pumping and the people who were looking for Pokemons, and both could be targeted just with one action. And aptly, the call for this flyer action, released in 2016, was posted on the Daily Stormer as a challenge. So the propaganda itself was designed as a game. Who can distribute most flyers, who can get more people in. And to give you another example, not from this political field, but from the German mainstream entertainment, the entertainers Joko and Klaas in German television play in a show, a private television channel, against their own channel. So they game for airtime on the channel. If they win, they can decide what's going to be aired. And they use, when they win, this airtime often for political messages. So they have gamified their own civic engagement as celebrities in a kind of win-win-win situations between them and the channel and the issues they advocate for. Now the question is, what bad things can happen when these techniques of engagement from gamification are used to stimulate or channel radical political actions? And there are some bad things that can happen. Generally, you could say that games are mastered by those who either make the rules or manage to successfully break the rules, or who get others to play along in their own game. Let's see a first example about this. Should be here. Yes. Oh, by the way, who of you is from Germany? And who of you knows about the Drachengame, meanwhile? It's not that many. Interesting. Because there has been a bit more media attention in the last month or so. Okay, I'm going to tell you about it. This is the worst part in a way. We'll be happy when we get through it. Rainer Winkler is a German YouTuber who calls himself Dragonlord. Has been doing YouTube videos since 2011. He's been doing Let's Plays, talking about his favorite music, other stuff that normal people do on YouTube or have been doing at least 10 years ago. And since Rainer Winkler is like he is, he has soon drawn satirical attacks and mockery. And this mockery grew and grew and grew and spawned a whole community of haters, a cyberbullying mob, so to say. This community conceptualized the fight between them and Rainer Winkler as a game, as the Drachengame, or Game of Trolls, as they'd called it for some time. And they also conceptualized this game as a entertainment series. They divided into over 14 seasons, each season covering a distinctive period of activity with some sort of spectacular ending. Of course, the haters can decide which is the different part of the series. They kind of rule the frame for the whole entertainment. And they started fictionalizing their attacks and his fighting back, because he just kept going. He was not driven off the internet, in order to increase the entertainment value and at the same time decrease, at least is my thesis, the reality of the violence they were inflicting, because hey, it's just entertainment, it's just fun. Drachengame became a bit more famous over the circle of this hater community, first by the season 8 finale, Mittwoch. This pic is unrelated to Drachengame. I'm just showing you to illustrate what Mittwoch means in English. It's a play of words on the community term met. Met is ground beef, juicy ground beef, and it's used in the community to denote the entertainment value of some event or the drama. It's like good met. And the German word for Wednesday, which is the second part of it, because the whole thing happened on a Wednesday. Winkler had fallen in love with an unknown young woman, so someone said, "I'm a woman," in chat, and kind of announced to propose to this woman online during a live stream. And I'm going to show you how it went. The thing is, this video is going to being recorded, and it's a bit a tough decision for me, because I like to show people what has been going on. At the same time, I don't want to contribute to just spawning one more recording of this event on the internet. So for this time, the cameras will just not be filming this stuff. So if you're online, I apologize for that. You will not be seeing what I'm showing now.
Also im Prinzip will ich dich hier live fragen, ob du mich heiraten willst. Nicht unbedingt der romantischste Antrag, aber ja.
Also Rainer, du bist echt ein ganz besonderer Mensch. Und mit besonders meine ich, du bist der fetteste, dümmste Idiot, den ich je in meinem ganzen Leben gesehen habe.
Oh Mann, Rückwandstück, das ist ja großartig.
Ich stehe zu meinem Ziel.
Oh, wartet doch auf mich, Leute. Oh Mann, Leute, ich bin Dorian, der Übermensch. Ihr kennt mich vielleicht aus Filmen wie VBT-Qualifikation 2015.
About 5,000 people watched this online happening. And Dorian the Übermensch, who kind of was one with the guy who kind of claimed to have invented the stunt on the far left, was a prominent member of the troll community of haters, and during the video battle tournament qualification 2015, the one he was referring there as a movie, he also gifted German neo-Nazis with what has become one of the most favorite T-shirt designs.
Du Idiot, hast weder Haare noch nen blassen auch Talent, und nach dem Umzug ins KZ kann man dich Aschehaufen nennen. Du Nogger, ich erwürge dich, du Bitch. Du bist zwar nicht unter 12, doch du wirst von mir gefickt. Ist auch wirklich jeder Blick, dass ich das Leben verneine und mit dem Töten von Gesinde du Hygiene betreibe.
So just to give you kind of an impression of the form of humor that was funny there. After the Mittwoch event, hashtag Drachenlord became #1 of the German Twitter trends for the first time, not for the last. In 2016 shooting, when a racist killed 9 people in a shopping mall in Munich, the hater community pushed images of Winkler as a supposed terrorist via Twitter, managing to have him shown in the Russian Novosti channel as the perpetrator. And they pulled the same stunt a few weeks ago when in Norway a man went on a killing spree with bow and arrow, and they managed to get some accounts with higher reach on Twitter and higher credibility to reproduce their claims that there was some Rainer Winklersen who did the terror attack. which then led to several international news pages featuring Winkler's photo and the fake name, with that name also trending on Twitter for some hours. The main forum of the haters on a website devoted to jokes featured over 300,000 entries on the Drachengame. And in the summer of 2018, more than 800 people turned up in real life to a supposed festival near Winkler's home, which they call the Dragon's Redoubt, throwing stones and eggs, starting a small forest fire, and prompting a large-scale police operation and nationwide press coverage on Arne Winkler, the Drachengame, and the whole events. It's a nice view into this hater community. For since Arne Winkler self-doxed his address in a live stream in 2014, saying, "Why don't you come over?" His house in a village in Franconia with only 42 inhabitants, the village, not the house, he is the only one living in the house, has become some sort of a pilgrimage site, with people driving into the village daily, prompting so many police calls every day that the municipality made lasting legislation to limit the right of assembly in town. We couldn't stand it anymore. There have been lots of filming, physical attacks, firecrackers, paint smeared on his house. His father's grave was desecrated. He was the first victim of swatting in Germany, with the perpetrator later being sentenced to more than 3 years in prison, at least. There's at least 2 weblogs devoted to the Drachengame, the Altschauerberg Express and the Altschauerberger Anzeiger, featuring daily news on the Drachengame. There are lexicon-like archives and chronicles, always expanding this vast compendium of fictionalized real events. The toxic relationship between the YouTuber and his haters among his 165,000 subscribers, not all of them are haters, but a lot of them are, is emotionally built on something that vlogger Natalie Wynn has described in a video as morbid cringe. She made an essay on the US equivalence of the phenomenon, like Christians. It's not like specific to Germany. This is happening in other countries too, but this is the main German thing. And this relationship also evokes an obsessive creativity among some of the haters, producing some kind of dark fan fiction, expressing the ambivalent emotional relationship at play. Arne Winkler, Drache, Altschauerberg, and Emskirchen have become German memes, something like, bear with me, the German paper, at least for a certain political scene, which is the new internet right, which took the Drachengame and Arne Winkler as an important cultural reference point, adopted it, so to say, and its toxicity quite similarly to the way alt-right activism co-opted image board culture in the US. The whole game went so far that the central hater community forum was presumably shut down by the administrator last summer. Not that they didn't find a new one, then that shut down and they found just another one. And on October 21st this year, Winkler was sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment for assault and battery on haters who had visited him at his house and provoked him and filmed him losing his temper and attack them, and then went to the police with the film material to get him into prison. And of course, haters instantly celebrated the sentence in expectation of what they call a prison season of the Drachengame. And I don't know how this will be going on, because astonishingly the state prosecutor appealed the decision in order to reach an even longer prison time for Arne Winkler. This is the Drachengame. And it may mainly look like a crude but somewhat single cultural phenomenon centered on one more or less random individual that might die off when this individual, I don't know, goes to prison or stops doing YouTube videos, which of course was, Arne Winkler was often advised to just stop filming. Why, if you stop doing YouTube videos, they won't do that anymore, right? Which maybe is not the best solution for something like that. But over the years, the more hardcore Drachengame troll community has spawned a codified practice and organization that in fact transcends the person of Arne Winkler already. They have a different game going for a while, and if it's not him, it will be someone else. And more withdrawn from the public eye, there have for some years now existed servers connecting the tactics developed in the wake of Drachengame to right-wing culture warfare, perfecting techniques like social media piling, shitstorms, doxing, and real-life threatening, very similar to what Gamergaters have been doing from 2014 in the US. So this is that. This is kind of the most unpleasant part. And maybe we can talk later why that is, because it's not easy to, I think, to find out what the reason is, because the other ones are more politically more organized. Let's jump over. Heimat Defender is largely a 2020 story. I would not talk publicly about back then because it was heavily centered on gaming attention, and it's always a good idea to not talk about things that want a lot of attention if you don't want to give it to them. But meanwhile, the attention game has cooled a lot, so here we go. Heimat Defender is a retro platformer game from the identitarian scene in Germany. You can play in it key figures from the German New Right as characters. You might know Martin Sellner, maybe Götz Kubitschek, maybe not, I guess not. And the other ones you will surely not know if you're not from Germany. And you play against a company called Global Homo. You may have heard that name. The company wants to turn all humans into soulless transgender robots and is represented by caricatures of far-right enemy figures like George Soros and more German people. The game was financed by a German right-wing NGO called 1%.
Also 1% ist eine hervorragende Initiative, weil es einfach so eine Art, ist so eine Art Greenpeace für Deutschland.
1% organizes the distribution of fundraised money and attention in the intersection of right-wing populist, folkish and neo-fascist projects in the German sphere, Austria and Germany mainly. And the game itself is downloadable on the developer's homepage. It was also to be released on Steam, but it was then banned, which was to be expected. And it was indexed, I think, this spring by the German Federal Review Board. There's like a board that can put some things, some publications on the index, so you can't distribute them legally anymore because they're deemed too dangerous. And 1%, the NGO, announced taking legal action against this decision in March, but so far they did not publish any updates on the proceedings, so I don't know if they do that, actually. The claim of 1% for advertising the game is as follows.
Am 15. September veröffentlichen wir von 1% das erste patriotische Computerspiel. Heimat Defender Rebellion.
Es gibt unterm Strich keine rechte patriotische Entwicklerteams, außer dich. Das heißt, wir haben eigentlich unterm Strich das erste patriotische Computerspiel geschaffen. So kann man das, denke ich, schon sagen.
Well, that's how you can say it. It's of course not true. There was pogromly, there was concentration camp manager, ethnic cleansing the game, nightmare of the Zionist-controlled government, Muslim massacre, red hunt, Moorhuhn with Jewish chickens, Arkanoid with black people, rape simulators, school shooter simulators, or more recently a game from the image board scene in the US where you can play Hitler, Mussolini, Trump, Pepper the Frog, or the Christchurch terrorist and shoot liberals, Democrats, queer people, or feminists. Which incidentally is fully identical to the gameplay of Homeland Defender. So the actual game already existed. They just remade it in German with a different aesthetics. But I guess it just boils down to what you call patriotic. It's a very useful term for the right, of course. The game was developed by Cult Games with a V instead of a U because it's cool. The homepage, developer Roland Moritz was head of an Austrian identitarian movement chapter, and we already saw him in the video with Philipp Stein as the first patriotic game designer. He's part of a quote-unquote patriotic artist collective, goes by the name of Cult Gang, and I'm showing you this, you get an impression of the aesthetics of the game and of what Cult Gang is doing. It's Fash Wave, the fascist appropriation of the 80s retro hype of the 2010s, namely of synth and vaporwave, which has been a global thing a few years ago. And at the same time, the pixel optics and two-dimensionality of the game follows some kind of a trend in indie games to counter the photorealism of big AAA titles, which you cannot reach without a large budget anyway, with historically conscious and more formal aesthetics. Saving on graphics also means for such a game smaller file sizes, which can be quite important if you want to distribute it widely. It's just one file. What's happening in the game, besides some self-referential celebrations of their own little neo-right identitarian bubble that honestly is too boring to translate, so I didn't do it. There's also references to troll culture. Not only is legendary German Reichsbürger Dr. Axel Stoll included as a character, he's also introduced with a synthwave song produced by people from the Drachengame troll scene. This is the same YouTube account you saw earlier drawing pictures of Rainer Winkler, who made the song, and they incorporated in the game to give a nod there, or to cooperate. Other references are to the US alt-right and image board scene, but first and foremost to the NPC meme that frames liberals as non-player characters, brainwashed by the elites. And with Heimat Defender, this game culture-inspired meme that went from games to political reality to denote the political enemy kind of returns into the game story. It's like a cultural feedback loop and, of course, some sort of joke to now have NPCs in the game that are NPCs. So you have NPCs as characters for NPCs. You get the joke. There are several dog whistles as well, like Globo Homo, for example, the company you're playing against. The peer group knows the term means, well, like gay Jews, basically. But they can always fall back onto saying, no, it's not what we mean. We mean global homogenization. That's what it's really about, and that's what we fight again. And then they can start talking about ethnopluralism when they are criticized for something like Globo Homo. So that's a game as well. All in all, this exemplifies discursive games with divided audiences. You can always say, you probably don't know this thing, you just ordered 3 beers, but it's a Nazi salute really that was invented because you couldn't make the Hitler thing anymore. Or you say you just waved with your left hand, but not with your right when you did this. Or you just made an okay sign. It's nothing bad anyway. And that could be well observed in the presentation live stream of Heimat Defender in September 2020, when the man playing the game, they did a let's play, of course, became a bit more exuberant because they drank alcohol. Yeah! Yeah! Whoops, there it was. And the live stream operator very quickly changed cameras when this happened.
Sorry, ja! Das ist meine linke Hand,
The political game of the game runs on 4 levels. The first level is the game itself as a propaganda tool. The goal, of course, is wide distribution. Therefore, they also made an additional English version that has been advertised through right-wing influencer channels to an international audience. So if you want to, you can play it in English. I've been told it's not a very interesting game, though. The target group is young men starting in schools. And if it's just a single file, you can easily trade it like on the schoolyard on a USB stick or something like that. This is how the developer rationalizes that target audience.
Computerspiele sind tendenziell, sie sind kompetitiv. Ja, es gibt auch viele Spiele, die irgendwie Kriegssimulationen sind oder meistens ist es irgendeine Form von Kampfsimulation. Und das ist durchaus etwas, was halt ja, junge Männer anspricht, die sie vielleicht nicht sonderlich beheimatet fühlen in der modernen, ja, kapitalistischen Welt, wie auch immer, die irgendwas suchen. Und es ist zwar nicht explizit politisch, aber Computerspiele sind irgendwie ein bisschen politisch unkorrekt. Und deswegen finde ich, es ist schon einmal von Haus aus ein dankbares Medium. Ich glaube, dass es beim durchschnittlichen Gamer auf einen fruchtbaren Boden eher vielleicht fällt. Ja.
Now, I did not talk about Gamergate, but when you know a bit about it, you will have noticed that the image of the average gamer he's painting here is more like a Gamergater. In fact, there's more women than men playing digital games today, but they're not in their target audience. Women dominate the mobile market, and men are more unlike the shooter game thing, but not alone there too. So this is a very small definition of gamer he employs there. Applies. On the second level, we have gaming public attention for the game. That was, of course, from the start, part of the calculus. A calculated provocation is the game's very existence, and of course they count on media excitement. And when the German public medium ZDF published a feature about Heimat Defender in TV nationwide, aiming to show its dangers, this was seen by the makers as a twofold success. Because first they got unpaid promotion on TV, and then they had successfully trolled a big TV station in Germany into getting themselves drawn into a shitstorm, because a shitstorm is what they got. In the case of Heimat Defender, this shitstorm was made possible through the exploitable tension between public media reporting and self-representations of the gaming community at large, which is historically tense, to say the least. In Germany, we have had years of killer games debates. Like, if you play those games, will you go and shoot people? People have gotten very wary about this when they play games. So vloggers from the gaming scene, after the ZDF aired this thing, had to position themselves as critical to alarmist public media reporting about the game, and at the same time keep their distance from the content of the game without upsetting their community, which was not easy to do. For Heimat Defender, this meant significant reach directly into the target audience. In the case of this channel you see here, Kuchen TV, this is close to 1 million people he is able to reach in Germany, and when he talks about the game, this is a good thing. So once you have this there, it just keeps continuing the attention. On the third level, there's gaming the discourse of the game to public attention for the game. I'll show you what I mean with that with the example of a Let's Play YouTube video on Heimat Defender by another YouTube channel, Massengeschmack TV. They did a Let's Play critical of the right-wing messaging of the game as far as they understood it, which was not very well. And what you see here is a flood of comments under the video, to the video, thanking the channel owners for making the game known. The social interface is an integral part of the YouTube game, and one of the most popular moves in comment battles is to frame criticism as advertisement. It sends a signal to the addressees: you can criticize the game as much as you want. In the fight for attention, we will remain victors because you have less control over the effect of your criticism than we do. We rule the comment section. We are part of your audience, and we can reframe what you did here. The crucial point here is mobilization and coordination of commenters. And the aim of such a comment storm, we know this from other areas as well, is to reduce debate focused on arguments to an exchange of performative gestures of dominance. This kind of subversion of discourse has been for a while at the heart of radical right-wing politics, and this is a good example. And the fourth level, and the last one, is building up on all these achievements by multiplying the formula that you developed. This is what they're doing right now. In spring 2021, the Heimat Defender developer launched the first patriotic game jam, called Heimat Jam, of course. And this event produced 7 game prototypes. You could all download them from their website. So suddenly there was like 7 games you could download, not real games, just prototypes. And his declared goal is to build up a network of radical right-wing game developers in German-speaking countries and beyond. This cultural initiative is flanked by, for example, regular gamer meetings of groups like Junge Alternative. This is the youth organization of Germany's AfD, right-wing populist party, which is also trying to recruit among gamers. Such an organization of structures also needs tools to manage. And one of those tools was occasionally mentioned in Heimat Defender discussions. And that's the last example I'm going to give you. I tend to assume familiarity of some of the characters because I've been watching them for a while. But for those of you who actually don't know the former Austrian leader of the identitarian movement in the German-speaking area, this is him.
Für alle, die mich noch nicht kennen, mein Name ist Martin Sellner, ich bin ein patriotischer Aktivist und Blogger.
And that's a frog showing a frog. When Sellner presented Patriot Peer to Patriot Peers in 2017 in Austria, the movement worked very hard to bring paper in all its glory to the German-speaking countries. That was a costumed promotion for Patriot Peer they did, which was not very well received in the scene because most people thought it looked really silly, which it did. The app Patriot Peer is meant to visualize a supposed silent majority of patriots that is just not taking power in Europe and the whole world because they are afraid to come out of the closet. So they need an app to do so. You get a Patriot radar like Tinder. You can find other patriots on the map, and then you can meet them and scan them, and that gives you contact and experience points. So you can level up with meeting other patriots.
Und damit haben wir eine Art Augmented Reality Live-Action Role-Playing Patriotenspiele, braucht noch einen besseren Namen dafür, geschaffen, in dem dein Ziel sein muss, in deiner Stadt, in deiner Gegend, die ganzen grünen Punkte zu scannen und zu blauen Punkten zu machen. Es gibt ein Leaderboard, also eine Rangliste in deiner Stadt, in deinem Land und weltweit. Wir werden wahrscheinlich so einen kleinen monatlichen Preis für den Top-Patrioten der Welt ausschreiben. Und es gibt, ich habe schon einen Rollenspielaspekt angesprochen, 3 verschiedene Möglichkeiten, 3 Pfade, um Punkte zu bekommen.
You can collect experience points, at least in the original concept of the app, for networking with other users, scanning their QR code, for stickering Nazi propaganda. I don't think this is still viable in the app, or for visiting and checking in at old German cultural monuments, because you then prove that you're a true patriot because you've gone to this thing, and then you get some experience points. This is, I don't know if this qualifies as role-playing, I don't think so. The goal for the whole thing is for top users to become, and I quote Martin Sellner here, as desirable as rare Pokémons. There was a fundraiser on Kickstarter in 2017 that was halted after 4 days after people protested against the platform supporting far-right content. But the development continued and it was supposed to be ready by the end of 2018. And there was a beta testing announced.
Das ist die Gamification des Widerstands. Das ist der Kerngedanke dahinter und die beiden Grundfeatures, wie ihr seht, funktionieren schon problemlos.
But then there were problems. The identitarian movement in Austria was searched by police and was pressured by a court case. Amazon Web Hosting, web service that was hosting the project was cancelled. The main developer quit, and it seems like he took the whole source code for the app with him. So they had to set up anew. There's still a developer, again, working on it since November 2019. There was a homepage with a devlog that was fast going offline again, but there's a Telegram channel, and the developers is keeping interested people informed about the status of the app. And current development status shows a map with players, locations, and events. Places can be enriched with info on, I quote, history, community, religion, and crime. And if you have a right-wing app and you can mark certain places with religion and crime, it's clear it's about marking target zones. Networking with militia groups, for example, the whole app was not meant to be just for the identitarian movement, but for the whole far-right scene. The places and events you can place on the map are only visible from, if you want so, from close up, which is a good thing if you want to organize a non-public meeting in a rural area, for example, concerts, trainings. You can just tell people to come to a certain place, and then if they're in the area, they on the map can see where they actually need to go. It's also easier to coordinate movements of groups that way. There's another app that is doing something like that for critical mass demonstrations. It's called Critical Maps. So if you're going somewhere, you just know where your peer group, so to say, is. You imagine you're on a Nazi demonstration in a city, and then after that there's some groups that go on to, I don't know, smash something or hit people. Then they can coordinate via the means of this app. The visibility of a user's location, name, profile picture for other players is adjustable by level. So you can say only players starting with level 40 can see me, or can see my precise location, or can see my bio. So you have some sort of an access barrier. Peering, meeting other people, works as a validation process. You have to meet a lot of other fascists and scan them, meet them live to level up. So it means if you're a certain level, you kind of are a certified member of the community in a way. That is meant to make the whole thing safe or work anyway, because it wouldn't work at all if you didn't have this, because as soon as someone get hold of the app, you could troll it or see anything. Like if you're from the police or from an anti-fascist organization, you could easily exploit this. Now, Patriot Peer is in the 5th year of development, and supposedly this spring, the app was ready apart from an integrated chat. And there was a closed testing, has been announced before, and it is maybe running now, I don't know. Maybe it is not, maybe the game has died. There have not been updates since spring, since April. And over the development of the whole app of Patriot Peer, it has become its own small meme in right-wing circles as the app that will never be. This is some YouTube comments from the Heimat Defender stream where someone brings up Patriot Peer and there's another one chiming in and say, yeah, maybe in 1,000 years it will come. Because it has been discussion going on for all the time because of the many postponements of the app development. But I guess time will tell if it really will come. If it does, it might be dangerous, and I guess pretty soon people will start examining it very closely and try to crack it, break it, whatever. That's all of the examples I had to give you. Thank you very much for listening. Now maybe let's talk, if you want to.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was a lot, actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was not like 40 minutes, it was more 40, 50, 54.
It was more like a lot of information in these 40 minutes, but I'm sure there's some comments or questions, and I will look for the other mic, and then I will come to you and we can talk.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm just a wizard. I'm not part of this artistic scene, but I work in a radicalization prevention, and I would like maybe you have an answer for me from your point of view. What do you think? How popular are these games? On the one hand, there are there are organizations who develop games, serious games for prevention, like the Anne Frank Bildungsstätte serious games as prevention. And what do you think about that? Does that really work?
So the Heimat Defender game, I wouldn't say it's very popular. They didn't reach a lot of people outside of their bubble. But I'm not a researcher, so I really can't say. It's probably not that easy to find out anyway. In a way, just like, of course, there's a different political angle, but games like this, propaganda games, suffer maybe from the same problems like other serious games with political issues, that they are always perceived not as a good game in the first place, but as something that wants to tell you something, which I think most often doesn't work extremely well. If it works, especially in the context of prevention, I have no idea. I think people who make these games evaluate that, and they should, probably, if they can. It's probably not easy, because how many people will say I would have become a fascist, but then I played the game. It's not how it works. So how do you evaluate anyway? So they would be a better address to ask them. it's yeah. I don't have a. Maybe you can be more precise. What do you think? What I think about this? What exactly is your question about?
No, thank you very much. That was, you know, I work with these people who I work with them who do these prevention games. But I'm just here for the fun, and it's interesting for me to hear your point of view as an artist. So that's you did it very well. Thank you very much.
There is a competition, of course, because as soon as you have a very easily identifiable serious game that like wants to teach people democracy or tolerance or whatever, it will be quickly singled out and made fun of. So one part of the competition also in the circles when Heimat Defender was developed is, of course, these games are not good, our game is good. But who's to say what's the better game? You will always say that about the others because it's basically a political fight you're doing and not like games criticism. The other question is if there's something like because every game, like every artwork has some politics inscribed to it, but still there's a difference as to how you play a game that first of all wants to be a good game and tries to somehow incorporate the present in its discourse, or if you play a game that really wants to make a political message.
Thank you for your talk and all these insights. I would like to know what's the role of humor in this scene, because it's like making fun of everything and then you can just step back and say, this was just a joke. So like with a greeting gesture. So and when does humor get serious in your view?
I guess the thing about humor and irony especially, because they use it a lot, is it's always serious. So like if you make a joke, it's not that you don't mean the things. It's just you have a certain way of delivering them, a way that makes people laugh. And that works very well for them. So especially the like chant culture, internet cultures are built a lot around humor because humor is a good thing. It's nice. It makes things nicer than being serious all the time. And if you know how humor works, I'm German. I don't know a lot about it. We're not very, we're not famous for being funny. Then you can also target all the other people who are not able to be funny, because you will be more attractive. It's basically an attraction game. It has allowed a large part, I think, of more recent right-wing culture to get very far with a lot of things. And I think to a certain extent, even when working on yourself, because as long as you can tell that's what I meant by Uneigentlichkeit at the beginning, as long as you can tell yourself that you're just making fun, you're not serious, you don't really want to kill people, you just want to make jokes about killing people, and you can radicalize a lot without even noticing that you are doing, because you're still in the fun and games area, and you can always say, hey, no, not serious, until someone does it. And the main principle for right-wing terror in the last years that was talked about as gamified terror, was to develop the cultural spaces, and often very humorous spaces, but at the same time toxic spaces, where people can radicalize in that way, and then you have a lot of people who still remain in the sphere of Uneigentlichkeit or of humor or whatever. There just needs to be one person who flips. And that's the one who starts killing people. And then all the others could say, oh my God, I would have never done that. It was just jokes. That's very convenient.
Is this the reason why they need these games? So basically, from a PR perspective, especially the identitarian movement wouldn't use any more games. So is it to keep this image of we don't really mean it, it's just fun and games, basically?
I think it's about recruitment for the most part, because games are the largest cultural industry of the world. It's the main culture. Meanwhile, it's not something that some people do. It's just there's the most money, and there's more than Hollywood or anything else. So if you want to connect with people who play games, and there's a lot of them, and they mean a lot to them, and they talk about it, and there's whole techniques of socializing that developed around playing games, you need to produce games. I think that's the main logic behind it. And then, of course, you want to produce a funny game, because more people will probably talk about it if it's funny. Or if it's edgy, and if it's both, then even better.
Yeah, thank you for the lecture. I would be curious to know more about your ways of collecting data and information, and also if you ever needed to play a role of far right to go inside the communities or something like that.
I've never done that. Of course, I thought about it at times. I've been collecting stuff since 2014 first for arts reasons, for theater making actually. And then I had so much stuff, and then I kind of started talking about it because people asked me to do it. And I saved a lot. So you start saving stuff, like a lot of videos, just because you know sometimes they just vanish, and if you find them interesting, you rather save them. But always things that were kind of public. I mean, whatever public in the internet means, because you still need to find them, but not like they're hidden or you have to infiltrate into a group. I thought about it a few times, but the thing is, if you really need to go into a vetting process with a group, then they will not only interview you, but most likely ask you, so what's your social media account? What have you been doing? You might need to spread stuff. And I never wanted to do that. I will not share Nazi memes online just to get into a Nazi group to make, I don't know, art. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, there are many things that touch me. It's because I don't want to talk about personal stuff, so I'm trying to get into the thought and not touch it, but at the same time touch it. So I got interested or touched by these rape simulators, and I thought about where are these communities built since the root point, and in the other hand by this YouTuber and the response of people of saying, well, just stop doing this YouTube thing, and how this position could be changed in a I don't know, in a matter of caring for each other, of course, but also of thinking that it's something that should be unbelievable to think of harming somebody for putting something in a public space, even if you know that it's the public space. And I mean, if someone uses a material that you have put in a public space such as internet, and then puts it in any other frame, for a matter of saying a porn page, a distribution page, a Nazi page, a right-wing force, like how all these alternative propositions of narratives because they might be these alternative propositions of narratives appearing in a public media are consumed by the opponent and diminished by the matter of making fun of them or by the matter of humiliating them. And yeah, that's what I am thinking.
I think I got lost a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
To this rape simulator thing. I mean, generally, I think there is just a lot of people who have the desire to harm other people. And it's not easy to counter that desire. It's not a rational thing. The whole thing about fascism is they just want to kill people. Is what they really want. And there's a lot of people who like men, I guess, who direct their violence at women. And traditionally it's built into a lot of male sexuality. So that's why rape simulators exist. There's communities, you know, if you talk about gamification, you heard of pickup artists maybe who talk about, or they conceptualize the relationship of heterosexual men to women as a game. And they try to know the rules and use them to their advantage and win because they see women as their opponent, and they win when they just get a one-night stand from them. And they classify them to kind of quality levels or whatever. That's how they perceive of romantic relationships as a game. And this gamification makes it easier to them to exploit that relationship or at some times just rape women. So these communities exist. And I think a lot of men exist that are kind of attracted to it. I guess, but I really got lost that you then started thinking about what we could do so it's not like that anymore. Which I'm not sure. Maybe I misunderstood. If that's the direction, I don't know.
In another hand, I think like if, and that's what I am doing in some part of my work. If I am wanting to raise good well-being, and then maybe it's another question. Good well-being and lowering the inequalities are two of the United Nations goals with which I am playing inside of a lab that is promoting catalyst projects. And the idea would be to create spaces for people to find their agencies and the way they can be read. They are how we read each other in a space and how to play through this frame of each of us need to frame the other one to make it intelligible to us. So for me, it's, yeah, like that's something I imagine of doing, but I'm still not knowing how to change this in some way, or at least to make it aware for some people that it's movable, that it's not fixed.
Hi. Oh, it's a little too close. Thanks for your talk. I was really struck by this idea that they'd made kind of people on the left into NPCs, and then how they'd also dehumanized this YouTuber. And I'm wondering if you've kind of monitored these comment sections and communities, how much of this between each other do they show, like, I guess, like a sense of belonging to each other and a community around each other? And I guess from there, I'm wondering, I know it's kind of a situation where outrage itself is gamified. So if someone
responds to them in the comment section, it's almost like they're rewarded for their stance. So I'm wondering if there are, well, I guess this ties into what he was saying, like alternative narratives that create that sense of community and belonging for those same people that don't perpetuate the dehumanization of people who disagree with them.
Well, what you described is like basically trolling. That's how it works. Of course, there's different narratives, and we're not all part of that culture. The tricky part is there different narratives for those people, whoever those people are, because there's reasons for people to be in those communities, and you would need to find out those reasons and change the kind of the ground of where desires build up, I think. So like you don't have to be violent to others. That would be kind of the message. I know you are, you know you like it, but you don't have to. You could also live and not do it. And I think it's very tricky in a society that is heavily built on competition and on exploitation, because it's just very plausible to do that. I mean, if you're every day pressured into like surviving in a world where everyone is competing against everyone, and you are always told you can make it. Everyone can make it, but not all can make it. You need to be among those who make it, because if you're not, look here, this is what's going to happen to you. If this is the world you live in, you won't succeed just by inventing narratives. You need to change the way this works, I guess.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. It was, I cannot say it was great, but it was very informative and well constructed. And you were talking about recruitment, and this seems like in the videos, and usually really young men appear, and at some point you were talking about this kind of barriers that they build. So like, for example, they protect themselves from the police. And I was thinking about Nazi groups inside law enforcement that actually have real guns and not fake guns. And I was wondering how interconnected are they, the Nazi groups and this like a prototype or these recruitment groups? Because there's also demanding like a lot of funding, and so, yeah.
Well, if we knew. So, yeah, there has been some kind of funding, police or state institutional funding for right-wing terror in Germany through what is has been called the V-Leute programs. That means you pay people from the scene for information. And there's been a lot of money given to people where it was pretty clear that was going to do what they were going to do, and many things happened in right-wing terror. I think especially in the 90s and 2000s that probably would not have happened without state money. So yeah, that's a thing. Most famous one is the NSU National Socialist Underground killings in Germany, and after 2 of them shot themselves, supposedly, in 2011, institutions started to shred a lot of papers and documents, so nobody would find out what they had been doing and what connections they were. That's one thing. Then apparently there's a non-significant number of fascists in police and military because they just keep finding them. And yes, they are also kind of diverting ammunition and weapons and stuff. It's not that kind of non-police or military Nazis don't have weapons that can shoot. Like, also have them. You can get them, or you can print them meanwhile with a 3D printer. But, of course, we don't really know. Because there's interests. I mean, we have been discussing for, I don't know, 2 years at least, about shouldn't there maybe some evaluation on racism in police? Because people keep dying, burning in jail or stuff like that. But so far it's not happening because there's a lot of people that don't want it. And it's very difficult to talk about it in a public discourse because, of course, not all people working at police are fascists, and not even everyone is going to the military is a fascist, or maybe is not there with the rationale to kill people, but more like, I want to defend other people, which is, I guess, viable as long as you live in a system where everyone has armies, you can just throw it away. But then other people are there too. But it's very hard to discuss that problem because it's like with everything. If you say, yeah, you know, there's some fascists, they will go, no, not everyone is a fascist. It's not all man. It's difficult to talk about it. But yeah, it exists. Was there more you asked about? I think I talked too much. And I forgot if there was more to your question.
No, I think you answered. I think also it's a kind of obscure, but I think it's a good strategy. Of course, if you like guys with 15, they're shooting immigrants online. It's a path, right? So maybe if you're part of Nazi organization, it's also of your interest to build these games. So I was also wondering, but this was an answer, yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. I have not been following this gaming scene since 20 years, maybe. But at the time, I was wondering what are the techno-epistemological conditions to turn a very fresh medium, such as a video game that we grew up with, and arcade games, and ping and pong and tennis and Frogger, into a technical tool that transmits as a kind of social communicative function, something that other media have been covering before. I made a film for Arte in '99, when it was very fresh to talk about games at this time. But at this time already, you could see that, for example, when the World Trade Center crashed, I remember that in the very moment between even the two crashes, I could find video games online where you would fly airplanes into towers. Before even the second tower crashed, you could find them online, and you never knew who programmed them. Or you could find Palestinian resistance games putting bombs at the Palestinian army in 2000 or 99. But this was very basic. I was just wondering, what is the turning point, both socially but also technically, epistemologically, so that this new medium could turn into such a powerful tool for political recruitment? What do you think are the criteria that enabled them historically?
Well, I'm not even sure if games are such a powerful tool for recruitment. It's just that gaming communities have become very large and influential, so it makes a lot of sense to recruit there when you talk the language. And I don't know if there was a specific turning point, but when computer games could merge with what the internet does, and you could have massively multiplayer online games, a lot of things changed, I guess, because these became social spaces and real-time social spaces. You could play together, you can go around, shoot other people, and at the same time talk to each other. Meet people, form large communities, develop social practices inside of those games. And that was very influential, I think. Well, it's not like it happened like that, but it was a process that built up with the technical capabilities of internet and the amounts of data we can push around.
Just an anecdote to that. I mean, I remember for that film, for example, in '98, filming people that already got married in this dungeon chat rooms. So, I mean, this function is also very old, but it has been very much more sophisticated over time. So, but this social function that you're addressing right now already existed, let's say, in '96, '97, '98. Yeah, okay.
It's just becoming more mainstream.
One last, okay.
Coming from you, who's done a lot of research into this, I would like to know how you use gaming in your practice and what role it plays, what it affords you, and where you think we can go with it. Because I think a lot of people here also have gaming in your practice.
I come from theater, and there's a funny division in Germany because I mean the thing you do in theater, acting. I mean, it's acting in English. In Germany, it's Schauspiel. It has game in its name, but still we regard games as a very different thing to what we are doing because we're just doing role playing in a way, and employing game mechanics, really designing some kind of game with the audience and building interaction is something we, with the group I've been working with, have not been doing a lot. We did a bit participation stuff, but like we thought about for some pieces, so should we do some levels? Should we have people collect stuff and level up and compete against each other to reproduce the environment we're talking about? But I don't know, we never managed to do that because it's a lot of work and you need to know what you're doing. And we never went there fully. So I think there's some kind of play at work all the time. But I would say, for me, I never built a game.
Doesn't have to be a mobile game.
No, I would never. I would definitely never build a mobile game. I had one experience of playing one, and then I ended up with 3 smartphones completely hooked on the suction mechanism of it, and then threw it away. If I would think about games, it would be theater games anyway. So the games you play in a space with people. But even that is something we did not really do. I like to. I don't know. There's this workshop tomorrow. Are you part of the workshop group? I'm probably going to talk about what I've been doing anyway, a bit more. So I could do it then. No.
Okay, I think that was a long evening. Let's try to calm down now. Thanks a lot to everyone, and thanks a lot to Arne Vogelgesang. Yeah, so let's go down and have this beer we were talking already about, and yeah, have a nice evening. Ciao.